Good morning. My name is Dr. Larry Force, and I'm a professor of psychology at Mount St. Mary College and director of the Center on Aging and Disability Policy, along with my friend and colleague, Dr. Kahana. Every Wednesday, we get together for a video cast, a Zoom video cast called ProActive Caring School Exchange. How we arrived here is that we were awarded a 3-year grant from the New York State Developmental Disability Planning Council to go out and provide mindfulness-based stress reduction training to families that have persons in the family with intellectual, developmental, or other disabilities. The first year we started with small groups, support groups. The second year we were going through the state doing train-the-trainer models, and then COVID came. And as a result of COVID, there was no way that we could assemble people. So in having a discussion with Lisa Nathan, who is a parent advocate and a meditator, and Peggy Pisano, school psychologist and advocate, they had come onto the grant about 8 months prior to COVID, and they were engaging with school districts. And then when that was not available, we decided to do this platform here, to use this platform. We were only going to go to April because schools were closed in New York for April. Then it was to the end of the year. So we went to the end of the year to June, and then we relaunched again, you know, as now people are coming back, because I personally believe that this is a more anxious time than it was before, because of the fact it's so uncertain and so unpredictable. Each school district is doing it differently. Each family is doing it differently. And we really feel as though that we can be of help and presence and support for families that are navigating this particular time period. This week, we have a very special guest who is Elisa Gwilliam, who is the CEO and founder and owner of the Hudson Valley Healing Center. The theme for this week is leading the calm, teaching at home from a parent perspective. And Elisa brings both to the table, both as a practitioner and also as a parent of a child where she is doing homeschooling and now online. So with that, Elisa, I'd like to welcome you.
Oh, thank you. It's great to be here.
Maybe you could start by just providing us a little bit of an overview of how you arrived here, you know, personally and professionally in this field. And then I know that Lisa and Peggy are going to take the lead in navigating this discussion here.
Yeah. Well, how I got to be a homeschooling mom is 2 years ago, my daughter had a incident where she went out on medical leave. And after her diagnosis, we realized she couldn't return to what a traditional classroom had looked like at that point. So we ended up doing home tutoring, a little bit of what the school did. We did it in conjunction with the school, as well as hiring private tutors. And then when she could go back, which would have been this September, we decided to pull her out of school officially and become a 100% homeschool environment for her.
And in the discussion that we had prior to lighting up the video cast last night, I think it was either Peggy or Lisa said something about, you choosing this direction. And you were very clear. This was not a direction that you had wanted to choose.
Yeah, I had my own stuff going on between school for myself and work and taking on projects. I did not expect to have a preteen home all day, and literally within 24 hours, she had a traumatic episode on Tuesday. Thursday was the first day of school. She went to school. Friday was the first day she was out of school. And the first 4 months of school, she attended school 12 days. And then we had to go through the process of, we spent some time diagnosing her medically and then coming up with a situation where she could go back and rejoin society. And at the time of her medical incident, she was unable to do anything. She would just lay in bed in pain. She got her days and nights mixed up. She had, we were dealing with the medical doctor visits and then the school visits and the understanding her diagnosis, and it's hard. And in addition, she is on the spectrum as well.
So how did you patch it together at the beginning? Because you weren't really, you were doing homeschooling. Were you doing homeschooling or home tutoring? I mean, how did that?
Initially, we weren't doing anything that had a label to it. We were just trying to figure out, oh, is this a 1 month thing? Is this a 4 month thing? We had no idea how long we were going to be out of school for. So it was just like, oh, doing enough, doing some stuff at home, but she was incapable of sitting up, being in a room with lights. Like there was no like, oh, we're going to do a couple worksheets, you know, because you're feeling better. She was completely bedridden for over 5 months.
And Lisa, do you want at this point, you know, as we talked about last night, you know, it's almost like, because you also are a practitioner, and I know that you were very glad that Elisa was able to join us. So at this point, I'd like to, you know, have your voice here.
Yeah. Well, Lisa, thank you for sharing your story. And, you know, meditation teaches you something, teaches many things, but one is about learning acceptance, you know, learning to how to deal with what's happening. And I know you said something which really struck me was it's all about learning, like from your own point of view, learning about yourself, not so much what your daughter is learning in school, but how do you deal with it, you know?
Yeah, it was a definite, you know, I got to learn a lot about my character and my personality and how I relate to medical professionals in the school district and, you know, and not knowing and just entering a thing and being like, well, I have no idea, but we're going to try our hardest. And I really just had to tune myself into the situation, which was not where my mind was at. So it was a complete, I mean, it was a beyond a 180 turn. You know, in our household, I was really counting on her going to school and being happy and doing work. I was not expecting what had happened to us. So I really did a lot of, you know, introspecting, of being like, what is this bringing out in me? And what am I doing that I really shouldn't be doing? And can I change direction? And then just how do I relate to a sick child? And then as she got better and she was able to go back now, how do I homeschool a well child?
Did you feel, did you feel that anxiety? Did you start feeling anxiety and stress over this, or?
Not so much, like a lot. It was different. The thing that brought the most anxiety was trying to explain my situation to other people. Or at times, you know, listening to the, oh, well, you know, you should have really, and if I was you, I would have. And I'm like, but you're not me. I'm leading my boat. And just keep reminding myself this, you know, we're going. And a lot of times you have to make decisions on the fly. Like, you know, with homeschooling, you know, is this a sick day? You know, what does it look like? You know, I can, and just being like, I can change my mind. I can change my mind. I can change our plan. We can adjust. It doesn't have to fit. It doesn't have to be, you know, we go to school 9 to 12 every day of the week. You know, it is what it is. And you're only doing the best you can. And I think the more stress and anxiety comes in when you try to play the comparison role to the mom that's online, or the one that's like, oh, I've got 8 kids and we're on field. And it's just like, well, great, you know, and celebrating, you know, and it's not just being, you know, you got to be happy for them that they're figuring it out, but you can't model them all the time because it might not be what your family needs. So I think mindfulness teaches you to drop in and be like, that's great, but no, that's not sitting well for me right now.
I think you said something so valuable and so important about, you know, not comparing. You know, it's learning. It's like, okay, this is my situation and I'm dealing it with the best way I can. And this is me and this is how it's going to be. And not comparing to the one who's got 8 kids and like they have like, you know, the whole plan, you know, worked out every minute of the day. And we're going outside and we're catching bugs and then we're coming in and we're going to make lunch and we're going to, like, you know, it's like, it's you and your child, and that's okay. And that's enough. And I think that's really, really important because we tend to beat ourselves up if we don't think we're being perfect.
Yeah.
And that's something so valuable that meditation teaches. It doesn't have to be perfect. You are figuring it out, and that's okay. Yeah, that's.
Yeah,
Really
we have a
valuable.
goal, and I have a goal, and this is how I chose to reach my goal.
Right. Yeah.
But you know, as we were talking last night in, you know, outlining what we were going to present today, you know, I mean, you, in many respects, you were really a lone wolf because of the fact that you were doing something that everybody else was not doing. Okay,
Yes.
so I'm assuming, and you know, and I'd ask Peg perspective here too, like from the perspective of the school district, do they rally around people that are trying to do this innovative thing, or do they not as a system? And then, and because the reality is that the irony is that everybody is really trying to get to where you've been. You know, so it's much easier, I think, now raising your hand, and you can address this as well. But I'm assuming it's much easier now when you raise your hand and ask for certain services that the district is much more flexible. Peg, you want to talk about that? I mean, from a, you know, from the psychology, special ed perspective, committee on special ed, a parent comes in and says, I want to do it this way. Do they usually rally around that parent, or do they usually say,
Well, I think it, you know, certainly it depends on the issue that's presented and what the needs of the student or child are. It's difficult, and I'm sure Elisa could speak to that. It's difficult to find, especially at a secondary level, people who can tutor. When you're in home tutoring, which is what she was in before, it's difficult to find people who will be willing to come to someone's home or go to Barnes and Noble or what have you and teach the curriculum that, you know, needs to be taught for 9th, 10th, whatever grade, you know, the student is in. So sometimes the school district, you know, will balk because it's just hard to put that plan in place. The second phase that she's in is really homeschooling. So she's really not associated with the school district. And now you're making your own educational plan. So it's two different things. And I think, you know, it really, there are many homeschool, and you probably know this better than I, Elisa, but, you know, homeschool organizations that look at different curricula and take students from point A to point B, depending on their age and grade. When you're home tutored, then you follow the curriculum and the requirements of New York State education for secondary students or what have you. So, you know, it's two different worlds. I think my question would be is, why did you choose homeschooling now? It seems to me like she's healthy, she could go back to school, but are you concerned about, you know, sort of what's out there in the world with COVID and so on and so forth, and how did you come to that? Because that's a difficult decision, even probably more difficult than the home tutoring, because that curriculum is driven by the state. Now you're making your own IHIP and your own curriculum. So how did you get to that point?
Oh, that is such a great question. And it was a little bit of the first year we were home, and I would say this school district was wonderful, but at the same time, they couldn't find anybody to come to us the first 7 months that she was home tutored. Not one guy came for 2 weeks, and then he's like, I can make more money tutoring Regent's kids after school, and he just left. We were like, okay. But what I did is, you know, there's two schools of thoughts then. People were like, well, you should sue everybody and go challenge them. And I'm like, look, you can't get water from a rock, and that process would make me feel miserable. So I'm going to hire tutors. And I just kind of, you know, went around, and we found some amazing tutors that have really helped her in a way that even the school district is blown away by. She went from being years behind in reading and writing to being at 4 years ahead right now. So you know, that one-on-one thing just worked for her. And I did, you know, in the beginning, people looked at me really funny when I decided to do this, like extend our home tutoring time with her medical, but she was doing so well, and she's a one-on-one learner. The reason we decided to switch from home tutoring to homeschooling was our school district didn't really have a solid plan for 10th graders, which is what she would be this year. It was going to be every 6 weeks, they were going to, you know, evaluate where they were and decide. And she had never gone, coming from private school, she had never gone, so she didn't know anybody. And it was just, for her, I sat down and I just thought about it, and I was just like, it's not worth stressing her out. She would be 100% online, and then one day going hybrid, and if that didn't work, they were back online. And, you know, she didn't know the school, the building, the teachers, the process. So we kind of just made the decision, and it was I've only been homeschooling 11 days, so I'm kind of really new. That for her, the best thing was to homeschool.
So, I mean, there you are, you're in the rhythm of your own life, and then all of a sudden you have to pivot and make these decisions a number of years ago. What advice would you give to parents that are wrestling with this? I mean, you're pretty good at, you're really excellent at accessing networks and making connections and stuff like that. What was the defining moment that you felt as though that you were on the right path? I mean, because don't forget, you were coming into a world that you knew nothing about. You didn't know the language, you didn't know the symbols, the images, and the next thing you know, you're talking that language.
Yeah.
Was there a person or an organization or an association that you reached out to that gave you support along the way?
No, you know, I tried looking a lot online and on like Facebook groups to find something that would work. And it was, originally we were out on medical, so it was a little bit different because we were more concerned with her medical diagnosis and living than we were with like her overall education path. But I think I just don't know where I got it from, but it was just like, she's gonna be okay. Like she's going to like be an adult, and she's going to be able to learn history and math, and it's just going to be in her own time. And that really kind of empowered us as a family to be like, you know what, it's okay. Like we're going to get to our destination or our midpoint and be able to like hit that milestone. And if everything's not met, then so be it. We'll take another 10 years and, you know, and round that corner. And I think taking for us, because she has an IEP and because she's on the spectrum, you know, she's triggered a lot by stress. She's introverted. So I had to just stop and be like, okay, what's my goal? My goal is to produce, you know, a contributing adult to society. You know, that's my goal. And when I really started to look at that, I'm like, wow, you know, she can cook amazing meals and she can do laundry and she can clean. Like she's, you know, self-sufficient of herself. And she did make such tremendous strides in her ELA studies, you know, writing and reading, you know, that was great. And then I'm like, all right, well, let's plug in a math program and let's just build it kind of like, I know you said earlier in an earlier episode, like kind of building the bus as you go along. And, you know, and just kind of set the intention that what we needed would come find us and be made known. And if I needed it, it would come. And if I didn't need it, it wouldn't. And this way it was great for her and I, because we could do piece by piece and kind of get the whole thing going. And that you're not perfect and you're not going to do it perfect. And just when you think you have it down, it will change completely, absolutely change completely. And it's just like, you know, this is today. And then this is tomorrow. And you take it day by day.
Two things have struck me and stayed with me about your comments when Jeff and I mentioned this last night when we had that planning call, that when Jeff and I first had a conversation with you and we were talking about the role that the proactive care would have in being able to help reduce stress and be present for families. This is when we were doing the small support groups. You said something which was very telling. You said, you know, sometimes going with chaos is a choice all to itself. You know,
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's the parent's personal responsibility about how they want to respond to it. And that typically is not what you hear. You know, typically what you hear in the programs are, okay, we can help you change. But you said something that really struck me, that it really, being, you know, swept away by the chaos or the stress is really a personal choice.
Yeah, I think our feelings are a personal choice. And I was explained by a meditation teacher years ago, that it's like you go to buy ice cream and there's like 31 flavors, just like there's like, say, 31 emotions. And you go in there and you get to choose what you're going to have. Am I going to choose to be reactive? Am I going to choose to put her down and be passive aggressive? Am I going to choose to be angry or grateful? There's all these things. And I get to go into the ice cream store and I get to pick what I want to have, and I have a choice in how I react.
And that particular perspective, I think I know the answer. I mean, is it embedded in the meditative practice and the mindfulness approach to life? Because this is what we're talking about, you know, leading the calm, the parent leading the calm. I mean, not everybody reacts that way, you know, which is a conscious decision of how you really want to react. Some people are just swept away by the emotion, no matter what it is. I mean, you feel as though that's grounded in your practice?
Yeah. And it's evolved over the last 10 years as my practice has evolved. And it's allowed me to view a circumstance through a completely different lens than I did 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you know, myself 20 years ago, and really begin to look at the situation. So if I find myself like, I really feel this should be done at this time, or why, you know, you had 5 hours, what did you get done? And you can log on now with homeschooling and see how much time they actually put in. So you can kind of like, you know, will that argument that I'm about to engage in with her, or the frustration, will that help me achieve my end goal of producing an adult that can contribute to society? And if I chew her out, or if I like, you know, do something and engage in this argument, you know, how many weeks or months am I going to have to spend rebuilding that part of her self-esteem? So is the argument for me really worth it? But I had that end goal, and that end goal comes to my mind all the time. And to do that, you know, we always say in our house, what you do matters, what you think matters, and what you model for others matters. And in my modeling a behavior, do I want her to treat her husband or her kids in the future like this? Am I actually modeling what I think is best for her in her life? So sometimes it's better to, you know, walk away and revisit it, or whatever your technique is, or just like pause out and breathe, or sometimes just be like, hey, you're right, let's go grab a coffee or an ice cream, or, you know, whatever, an iced tea, and just go hang out for a minute and just be like, you know what, this is really not important. And then sometimes you can diffuse the situation, and within a half hour, she's just like, well, you know, I really should get that done. I'm going to go spend 40 minutes and, you know, and I'm just going to get as much done as I can. So now something is better than nothing in that project. And she's able to like, you know, be like, okay, you know, whereas if I had gone down my natural, you know what I mean? Like that instinct route of, you know, these are my expectations, this is what we're going to do, don't you understand that, you know, it would have taken us longer to get that same amount of work done.
So Lisa, I just want to say this, Lisa talks about a defining moment. She can tell you almost today, she was walking the dog, you know, she's addressing a lot of family issues, and she just decides that it's like an enlightenment, that this is not the way she wants to be, and she starts her meditative practice that she brings so powerfully into this program. Was there a defining moment? I mean, did you always feel as though you thought this way, or this is something, like you said, your practice has grown? Can you, not that you give us a particular day, but is there a particular time that you said, you know what, I want to try this. I just want to try it, which is the mindfulness stuff, the breathing, the meditative stuff. Is there a particular time frame?
There was 2, and I remember being in like the end of high school, and knowing that was really bizarre because mindfulness really wasn't out mainstream. We didn't really have internet. So it was like, I found that when I hit a situation, like I liked to count to 10. So I don't know why, and it wasn't really a mindfulness thing, but I just really liked to count to 10. And then years later, when Sydney was about 3 years old, I got misdiagnosed with a terminal illness. And it was then that I decided that this was my call to change my life completely and leave more of the large scale corporate world. And I found Buddhism. And that was a really, you know, a big turning point, where we went to temple, you know, every week on Sunday mornings, and learned more about herbs and meditation and Buddhist philosophy and history. And then from there, was able to be more involved with people in the field and like studying under different people. And then that was my turning point.
And the second thing is, you said last night to us that knowing Sydney, your daughter's rhythm, you know, what a day looks like, you have no problem doing this, the schooling at night. So you're not
Yeah.
locked into a particular time frame that may not work.
Yeah, as much as I would love to be structured and be like, okay, I'm going to put on my blackboard and, I love school supplies. So be like, oh, 2 hours every day, I'm going to be the teacher. It doesn't work for my schedule either. So, and I'm still swallowing that pretty hard. I would really like that more. But my daughter one day casually said, she was so surprised. She's like, huh, I really work better at night or evening, nighttime. And I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. You know what I mean? So maybe we need to alter our model a little bit. We also decided when we decided to homeschool that we were going to set periodic meetings about every 2 weeks, just to see and check in to see, what was going well, what wasn't going well, what was working, what wasn't working. And this way we would know how to kind of adjust how things were happening. And a lot of times I found with her being the age that she is, if I don't check in and ask the question, she's a little shy and doesn't necessarily share the information. So those check-ins were super important because then I get to really understand like what's working for her.
Lisa?
Yeah, so much of what you've said has resonated, and you mentioned intention before.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if you could expand on that a little bit, because intention setting is so important in reaching goals and in really finding what you need.
Yeah, so for me, when I set an intention, it helps me realize if my actions are lining up with where I want to go. And sometimes if you don't have an intention, you're kind of just a little bit I'm all over the place. Like, I'm going this way and I'm going that way. But when I do have an intention, I can kind of see how things are unfolding in my life that kind of string it all together and help me get to where I'm going.
Yeah, that's very powerful, and something in our meditation that you learn, intention setting, like the intention to be present, the intention to be focused, the intention to listen and hear someone else. I love the way you describe, it seems like you're so in tune with your daughter, and you have to not leave yourself out of it, but you're learning how to, in the example of her learning in the evening, how to let go of your own expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's so important and something that you learn in meditation.
Yeah, and I know we spoke about, earlier, right as the call was starting, about how, it goes by so fast, the years that you have them and can help, help model them. And, a lot of it was just realizing who she is and letting her try stuff in a safe environment and before she goes out and tries it in college or a workplace. Like, let her kind of figure out and try stuff out while she's at a place that's kind of safe and structured for her. Right. So that was a big thing about allowing her to be her. And then it also kind of gives you permission to allow you to be you.
Right.
So Peggy, Elisa talks about the role of the parent, reaching out to the school district. What advice would you have from, and I know you can't speak on behalf of all school districts, but what advice would you have for parents who are engaging the school district? Because don't forget, schools run on a particular program, a particular time, there's a particular curriculum. And now, COVID has given us, an opportunity to, change things or modify things. But what advice would you have from a behavioral or from a school psychology perspective?
Well, again, I think it's difficult because there's such diversity in what's happening out there in the world. However, I think that when we're dealing in an educational world and we're planning for our child's future, there are some strategies. So for example, some kind of structured, whether it's night or day, but some kind of structured, organized system for getting the job done. Elisa, your daughter sounds unique in the fact that she's motivated to do her work and do what's required. Not all students want to do that, and not all students can do that independently. So, you know, if you have a child who can't, then as a parent, you have to structure that activity for them, or they won't learn those future skills, because the world doesn't always work on, you know, your own individual schedule. So I think a structure of what you want to accomplish, however you structure that, and then some kind of everyday activity related to the educational system. Again, whatever that means is going to be very individualized, but, you know, a Monday through Friday, so to speak, schedule. It's a work schedule. It's usually a school schedule. It's kind of the environmental schedule of most people. So I think that would be helpful. I think that, you know, other activities need to be put forth and built into a schedule. So, rest time and snack time and fidget time and all of those things that kind of take you away from the educational structure, but give you the ability to kind of get back and focus. It's very, I think, challenging. I know Stacy spoke last week about the things that she's doing for her particular children, which is, you know, having a place for them to be educated in her home, which is not the kitchen table where most people, you know, have their child do their homework, but she has an actual sort of school-like position or condition in her home. So I think something like that is helpful. I think, you know, as Alyssa mentioned, the internet is a very powerful tool to educate, but it's also a scary tool for kids who go places where they shouldn't go. So, you know, there's got to be a balance in that sort of activity, but I think that is a great way to interface with other things. I just saw this thing online the other day about National Geographic has science programs that kids can do with people in a Zoom situation. So certainly that's a way to access science, and you can go to museums and you can do all kinds of different things. But, you know, some kind of system for understanding math, science, social studies, English, what have you. So, you know, I think wherever to model and emulate what schools are doing, you know, is probably in preparation for whatever the next step is, whether your child's in middle school, going to high school going to college. I mean, there are certain basic requirements that, you know, you need to accomplish. So, you know, I think some of those kinds of strategies would be helpful for parents who are either remote or homeschooling or a combination thereof.
All right, look, this is great. Alyssa, I mean, you know, when Peggy and Lisa came up with the title of Leading the Calm, Teaching at Home from a Parent Perspective, you know, we said this to you last night, your face is all over it because of the fact that you are, you know, leading the calm, you know, in the professional and personal work that you do, and you are teaching at home from a parent perspective. I know that, you know, based upon time that you have to leave at this point. But before you go, I'd like you to take this opportunity to talk, you know, for a minute or so about the Hudson Valley Healing Center, because you're doing such great work here, and you're also doing great work on other platforms, you know, that we're involved in collaboratively. So maybe you could just talk a little bit about how people could contact you, and also about the Hudson Valley Healing Center.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much. You know, and every parent out there that's homeschooling or remote learning, it's right. Do it. Figure out what works and just do it. And you're doing a great job. And don't let your thoughts ever come into play that you're not, because you are. You're doing something that is never really been thought of or planned upon. You know, and you're doing a great job as everything's happening. And there's so many resources out there. And just find somebody to talk to. Make sure that you have somebody to vent to and stuff. But so we are at the Hudson Valley Healing Center and offer meditation and Tai Chi classes and, you know, all sorts of wellness activities. And you can find out more at our website, www.hudsonvalleyhealingcenter.com.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. And what we were hoping to accomplish today, obviously we did. All right, so
Fantastic. Thank you.
All right, so I know that you have to go, and Lisa, Peggy, and Elaine and I, we're going to continue on for about another 5 minutes. All right, but thank you again. You did great.
You guys have an awesome day.
All right, you too.
And
now.
thank you so much.
All right, bye now. So look, this is what we had hoped to, provide an overview from leading the calm, how to take care of yourself, and also from a real parent, lived experience, and I think, as I said earlier, she really was a lone wolf, in trying to, carve out a path that wasn't really accepted. And now COVID comes in and there's multiple paths. And not only are parents trying to figure out new ways, but school districts are trying to figure out new ways. But Lisa, what one of the things we talked about is the value add of the practice of, if we're talking about leading the calm, Elisa comes to the table and she provides an overview of what it's like. But she also is a practitioner, as you are. So the fact is, maybe you could provide, 2-minute meditative example of what to do as you start to, move
Sure. Yeah, I could hear so much of her experience, coming through her story, her meditative experience, her ability, and it was really quite incredible. And I just wanted to jump up and down and just get yes, yes, yes. So, but here we are. I'm honored to be here and to share a moment of calm together with everyone here. So, bringing our attention to our breathing and body is a great way to de-stress our overactive minds. And there's some machine outside. I'm sorry, I don't know what's going on. I hope it's not too annoying. So let's start by closing our eyes for a moment. And as always, we're going to start with our breath to help us come into our body. And we're going to do that by taking an inhale through our nose and exhaling gently through our mouth, and doing that 2 more times. And it's that exhale through our mouth, that long, gentle exhale, which creates a rest response in our bodies, a relaxation response. And while you're here, check in on your body if you feel any tension or pain in your body. And if you consciously breathe into those areas and relax, you can just, without judgment, without trying to label what you feel, just gently breathe in and breathe out. And that can help reduce tension and even pain in your body. Now I just want you to gently breathe in and out through your nose at your own pace. And remember to feel connected. We're going to feel connected to the chair we're sitting on, to our feet flat on the floor, our hands gently resting in our laps. Now, something that meditation teaches us as we're gently resting our attention on our breath is trying not to judge or berate ourselves when our mind wanders. We're here focusing on our breath, and guaranteed at some point your mind will wander. And it's the coming back gently and lovingly to your breath, without judgment, without berating yourself, where the magic happens. If you imagine a puppy you're trying to teach how to sit, you tell the puppy to sit, and it obediently sits, but a moment later, while it's wagging its tail and kind of doing its thing, it gets up and walks away. Well, you don't scold the puppy, you don't punish the puppy, you gently guide it back and have it sit again with loving words, with positive words. And it's the same way we should treat ourselves. When our mind wanders, come back with love and patience and acceptance without judgment. And it's in those moments that we start to find our calm. And in this, it's this constant loving guidance, coming back to your breath, where you develop that calm. And when you learn how to find your own calm, you learn how to leave behind the negative patterns of thinking and developing a beautiful ability to respond with the love, the patience and acceptance that's in your heart. And when you can do that, that outreaches to everybody. It outreaches to your family, to your child in all moments. So let's just take one more breath. And I'm just so appreciative of having Elisa share her story. It was such a beautiful guiding light for where we are right now. And thank you very much.
Well, that was great, Lisa. Thank you so much. So again, the theme was leading the calm, teaching at home from a parent perspective. And I think Elisa did a great job in adding voice and face to that discussion. So we'll see you again next week. And thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Peggy. Thank you, Elaine. And everybody have a wonderful week.